morning and welcome to Rising. We have a great show for you today. I'm Amber Duke, joined again by Niall Stanage.
Great to see you again, Amber.
2 days in a row.
2 days in a row. Always a treat. So a lot to get to, I think.
Yeah, hopefully the viewers don't get sick of us.
I'm sure they won't. It's always a treat for them too. In any event, some House Republicans are not happy with the changes the Senate made to President Trump's so-called Big Beautiful Bill. In fact, two are already threatening to vote against a chamber-wide procedural rule, a move that could put the goal of passing the bill by July 4th in jeopardy.
While the House Rules Committee did pass their procedural rules 7-6 very early this morning, now the entire chamber must adopt it. Here's Republican Congressman Ralph Norman railing against the Senate's version of the bill yesterday.
What the Senate did is unconscionable. What they did to our bill was unconscionable. It is my hope we'll go back to the drawing table and get very close to what we sent the Senate, because instead of each individual senator getting a goodie bag and sacrificing the health of this country is an abomination to, again, the founders and the 56 signers of the Declaration of Independence.
Norman, alongside House Freedom Caucus Chair Andy Harris, said they'd vote against the procedural rule, which sets the stage for debating the bill. Harris and Norman say they need to fix some of the deficit issues before they vote in favor. Republicans can only afford to lose 3 votes if they want to clear the procedural hurdle. Here's what Speaker Johnson had to say yesterday.
As the president said, it's his bill. It's not a House bill. It's not a Senate bill. It's the American people's bill. And my objective and my responsibility is to get that bill over the line. So we will do everything possible to do that.
Democrats, meanwhile, are doing what they can to voice what they say are the dangers of this bill. Let's listen.
The Democratic response is just one word: why? Why would anyone vote for a bill that kicks 17 million Americans off their health care?
We're just going to try to get the message out to the country about what's in this monstrosity of a bill. And we could do no better than to quote the Republicans who've said they'd rather leave politics than to have anything to do with it.
So obviously a lot of the attention naturally on the Republican divisions here, Amber. The math is very narrow, as we said there. It seems to me that there is genuine policy difference here. I mean, there are very fiscally conservative Republicans, and this bill is projected to add a lot to the deficit. On the other hand, obviously President Trump has a very strong grip on the GOP, and I think it would be fair to say stronger in this term than during his first term. So you're the expert on the conservative side. Where do you see this going?
Well, I think that you'll have probably 2 people vote against it, and those 2 being Thomas Massie and possibly Chip Roy, both of whom have not been the favorites of President Trump and have been happy to sort of throw sand in his eye on occasion when they are feeling like they're standing on principle. So I don't see either of them feeling the necessity to vote for Trump's signature legislative package. Marjorie Taylor Greene, on the other hand, has also expressed misgivings about the Senate's version of the bill. Do I see her being the vote that tanks the big, beautiful bill? No, I do not.
Because you think that she would be too reluctant to get crosswise with Trump,
Correct.
Basically. Yeah. I mean, that is my overall sense of it as well. I think that there are people who have misgivings about this for sure. And I think that a lot of them, to be fair, are sincere in those misgivings. And I think that I would include Greene in that category, and there are a number of others who have, particularly the kind of House Freedom Caucus type people, who seem to have some doubts about this. But when the rubber hits the road, the question is, are they going to vote against Trump's signature piece of domestic legislation? And the chances of that just seem slim to me, despite the price tag for all of this.
Yeah, I think they'll ultimately fall in line. But the question then is, are they going to go ahead and advance this to the floor for a debate? Or are they going to try to either amend this thing and send it back to the Senate or start from scratch? Those are all, I think, legitimate possibilities at this point. Will they get it passed by Friday? It doesn't seem likely if they have this many members of the House raising objections. Even the ones who will probably ultimately vote for it, like Ralph Norman, like Andy Harris, are going to want to at least make their objections heard publicly and loudly and force the other members of their party to either offer something in return, like they did to Lisa Murkowski in the Senate, frankly, or just to tell them we hear you.
That was a good old-fashioned buy-off of Murkowski in the Senate,
Crazy.
really. Some of those measures were kind of wild. There was something for whalers in Alaska, I think, was one of the special measures intended to buy her support successfully.
And she avoided the Medicaid cuts because they cited non-contiguous U.S. states are not subject to the rollback of the Biden-era expansion.
Very, very handy rollout there. President Trump makes a visit to the brand new detention center dubbed Alligator Alcatraz. Now, his snarky advice for future residents of the deportation facility coming up next.
I guess that's the concept. This is not a nice business. We're going to teach them how to run away from an alligator, okay? If they escape prison, how to run away. Don't run in a straight line. Run like this. And you know what? Your chances go up about 1%.
President Trump insinuating there that his new immigration detention facility in the Florida Everglades, dubbed Alligator Alcatraz, is meant to be inhospitable, apparently telling a reporter who asked if potential escapees would be eaten by an alligator, quote, "I guess that's the concept." President Trump also seemingly trolling the future residents by giving advice on how to run away from an alligator. All of that before taking a tour of the facility for its grand opening on Tuesday. It's built to hold hundreds of detainees while they await deportation.
The facility's grand opening was heralded by the right, with the Florida GOP even selling Alligator Alcatraz merch. Take a look at this video from conservative podcaster Benny Johnson, who was invited along for the tour. Republicans are also encouraging governors to open similar sites in their states. Take a listen.
Of a red state, and if you're watching tonight, pick up the phone, call DHS, work with us to build facilities in your state so that we can get the illegals out, we can get the criminals out.
We reach out to other states, Stephen, and a lot of them are open to helping. Alaska told us that we don't have alligators, but we have lots of bears. However, they aren't aware of any plans for an Alaska version of bear. I said bear Alcatraz.
Meanwhile, some on the left are going so far as to draw comparisons to Nazi concentration camps, with some renaming the project Alligator Auschwitz. I find the humour in this difficult to locate, I have to say. Now, comparing it to, like, Auschwitz, I think that's another example of sort of degradation of our general debate. I don't think it is comparable to Auschwitz. But I don't like the tendency we seem to be exhibiting increasingly to sort of adopt the language of trolling or of Twitter dunks to things that are serious policy matters. And we saw some of the merch there. I guess it was Benny Johnson showing it off. But even among people in government, you have those photos of, like, the alligators with the ice caps on, all of that. Or Laura Ingraham chuckling along with Stephen Miller about, well, maybe Alaska can set bears on people rather than alligators. I am not on the immigration question at the most liberal end of the spectrum. I think if people come to this country illegally and get caught, there are obvious consequences to that. But I don't like the kind of glee and contempt that I think is reflected in some of this stuff. To people who, yes, they may be in the country without authorization, the majority of them having done what millions and millions of people in the history of this country have done, which is try to come here to create a better life for themselves, often working poorly paid jobs, getting paid under the table, etc. That does not mean I am in favor of illegal immigration, but it does mean that I'm against that kind of contemptuous, seeming to dehumanize people, in my view.
I think this reaction stems from what the American people viewed as contempt for their concerns about illegal immigration, particularly over the last 4 years. They felt like their political leaders were laughing in their face as they imported millions of illegal immigrants and seemingly didn't care about the consequences, didn't care about housing shortages, apparently didn't care about illegal immigrant crime because they didn't cooperate with ICE and allow the jails to release people who had committed crimes. Joe Biden failing to say Laken Riley's name properly at the State of the Union, never calling Patty Morin the mother of Rachel Warren, or Jocelyn Nungary's mother, I think the American people felt disrespected, and so this is a celebratory moment for them that they have political leaders who are willing to take this seriously.
But do you think that the seriousness of those things that you have just reflected, like crimes and murders committed by people, do you think that it is reflective of the kind of gravity and of those situations to be going around chuckling about, like, maybe Alaska can use bears, or selling Alligator Alcatraz merch? I mean, that just seems to me to be actually trivializing a issue that you rightly say is serious.
I think it's poking fun at the apoplectic reaction to a detention facility being built from the left.
But I mean, the reason that Trump is glorying in this particular immigration facility is the idea that, oh, maybe we can teach them how to run away from alligators. Like, that is by its nature making light of a situation rather than reflecting its seriousness.
Is it really a situation that could even happen with some non-zero percentage that someone is going to escape from this facility and be running through the Everglades? Like, the concept is funny because it's so surreal, because it's not going to happen. This is a secure facility. And by the way, hugely efficient. They managed to put up 3,000 beds in 8 days. And not only that, but it also couples transportation for removals because of the fact that this was built next to an abandoned airstrip. So I think this is a marvel of quick American engineering, of the ability to consolidate both detentions and removals at one location on the eastern seaboard. And it's worth celebrating.
Yeah, I mean, with all due respect, it seems to me that you're slightly trying to have it both ways there, because you're saying on one hand, oh, this is so secure, nobody will ever escape. And you're also saying the fact that people, the Trump's comments about the alligators are ludicrous because it will never happen. The alligators are things that he is presenting as, in the general sense, part of the security. People won't escape because they'll get eaten by alligators. This is just, to my mind, part of a rhetoric that seeks to ridicule people, actually, and ridicule a situation that is serious. And yes, there is a legitimate case to be made for harsher action regarding people who are in the country illegally, in terms of, for example, tightening employment safeguards and so on and so forth. We have seen Trump trying to flit around all over the place in terms of people who work on farms and the hospitality industry as to what he's going to do there. But to have people in the government tweeting photos of alligators in ice caps, like, you really don't think that that is undignified?
No, I think it's funny.
Okay, well, we just disagree on that. President Trump got his settlement with Paramount, but without one big item on his wish list. We'll discuss that next. Paramount has settled President Trump's CBS 60 Minutes lawsuit for $16 million. It is, to all intents and purposes, a jackpot deal for Trump, but he won't be getting the apology he was chasing after. No statement of regret will be necessary from the company or its journalists, but the news program will have to release their transcripts of interviews with future US presidential candidates.
As a reminder, Trump filed a $10 billion lawsuit against CBS in October after their interview with then Vice President Kamala Harris. Trump alleges that they deceitfully edited the footage to tip the scales in favor of Harris's presidential bid. The outlet maintains they edited the interview for clarity and length. The $16 million will go towards Trump's future presidential library.
This comes after Paramount Global Chair Shari Redstone faced intense calls not to settle. Redstone is seeking to push through an $8.4 billion merger between Paramount and Skydance, one she personally would receive a payout from. The catch, of course, is that the Trump administration's FCC must approve that deal. Left-leaning political commentator Brian Krassenstein sounded off on the merger, writing, quote, "In other words, they were extorted and caved. Boycott Paramount. 60 Minutes employees quit." I am unusually aligned with Brian Krassenstein's views on this. I mean, I just think it is really abject. I'm sure you have a different view, but just let me rant about this for a second or two. I mean, to me, this is just yet another capitulation to President Trump without any just cause at all. To my mind, the editing by 60 Minutes of the Kamala Harris interview was completely standard journalistic practice. I do not accept that it changed her meaning at all. I do accept that it was condensed for clarity. I think the case that Trump took in Amarillo, Texas, no less, so he could be assured of a friendly judge, was entirely spurious. And the fear or the worry in all of this is that when you have something like this, it goes to the heart of the journalistic enterprise to me. Most news organizations, even though the independent sector has thrived recently, most news organizations have corporate owners, including The Hill and including almost everywhere. And we as journalists are dependent upon those owners at least having some bedrock defense of journalistic standards and journalistic legitimacy, and standing up for people if they incur the wrath of the powerful. And here, Paramount, out of, in my opinion, avarice to get this merger through, has just completely bent the knee and completely undercut its journalists.
Do you think it's any comfort to their journalists that they didn't have to issue an apology?
No, I don't. I mean, it's because, look, everyone, I mean, this thing, and Paramount is pushing that, oh, we didn't apologize.
Yeah,
the whole thing of the 16 million settlement, this is a victory for Trump. Like, I'm not disputing that. I'm lamenting that it's a victory for him, but it's a victory for him.
Yeah, I mean, 16 million's really small compared to what he asked for. And look, I agree with you that CBS probably settled this in the hopes of sort of greasing the wheels with the FCC. But it could have, I think, been a lot worse for them. 16 million and no apology is actually a pretty good deal to not have to go to discovery, to not have to go to trial and spend all of that money in legal fees. I think they kind of made off here, especially in regards to the merger. But I am curious about what FCC Chairman Brendan Carr is going to do, because he has been notably more wary of industry and monopolies than Trump has been, and doesn't have these same friendships and relationships with various corporate executives. So I'm wondering if he is going to play ball here or if he's going to put up a little bit of a fight.
Sure. I mean, it would be kind of grimly hilarious if after making this settlement they said, no, you still can't have the merger.
That would be really funny.
That would be, I mean, there we do agree. That would be kind of funny. Because, look, I mean, you're saying 16 million, you got away with it because there was no discovery, and Trump sued for, I think he initially sued for 10 billion. Yeah. And did he up that afterwards to, like, he doubled that, I thought, at some point later.
It's possible.
But, I mean, you know, that's just Trump doing his usual art of the deal thing where he just demands an exorbitant sum.
And it works every time.
And it works. And I mean, it's just so, I find it just so bleak. And also, just to get back briefly to the 60 Minutes thing, there's a lot of misinformation about what happened there, because people have said things about, oh, they pulled answers from a completely different question.
Yeah, that's not quite right.
They didn't. They shortened a series of questions about the Middle East. And then even the argument about what they supposedly did wrong has shifted a little bit. At one point, there was a longer segment played on Face the Nation and a shorter segment played on 60 Minutes. And the objection was the difference between one to the other. Then the difference became somehow they edited it at all. And to your point of things that are so hyperbolic as to be funny, I noticed that Trump's lawyer claimed he suffered mental anguish as a result of this edit. I mean, anyone who thinks that's a real claim is just, you know, it needs their head.
Yeah, so I have the transcript up here, and it looks like,
so do I.
Yeah, the question was answered fully with, well, Bill, the work that we have done has resulted in a number of movements in that region by Israel that were very much prompted by or a result of many things, including our advocacy. Sorry, I forgot how bad this was. Including our advocacy for what needs to happen in the region. And we're not going to stop doing that. We are not going to stop pursuing what is necessary for the United States to be clear about where we stand on the need for this war to end. And so they basically took out the whole first part and started it at, we are not going to stop pursuing what is necessary for the U.S. to be clear about where we stand on the need for this war to end. So I know that we probably disagree on the substance of the first part of the answer, which I found to be quite word salady and sort of indicative of her common want for verbosity when she doesn't really understand what she's trying to say. But if you don't feel that way about Kamala, that might not seem deceptive to you.
Well, I don't feel that way about that particular answer. I do think that she is prone to somewhat verbose answers. I think Trump is massively prone to verbose answers. Yeah, well, this is the thing. He gets away with it as the weave, and she gets lambasted for it as word salad. I mean, I have, as I'm sure you have done prior to TV appearances, sat through Trump rallies where you're trying to extract the one or two news-making comments from just this morass of incoherence, and that happens all the time with him. To the point about the words that you read out, to me that was just a mundane recitation of what the Biden policy was. I didn't think it was particularly bad or particularly good. I think it's laughable to suggest that its exclusion would change anyone's voting intentions one way or another. And the overall point, to my mind, in all of this is again that corporate imperative. Paramount basically sold out their journalists to try to get approval for a merger, and Trump has successfully extorted them as far as I'm concerned.
This also comes in concert with the settlement related to George Stephanopoulos at ABC, and I know we've talked about that before, but you found that one to be more damaging for the brand than...
Yes, because Stephanopoulos did say something wrong in that respect. Now, whether the 15 million in that case, had that gone to court, would there really have been a 15 million judgment against Trump? I'm skeptical. But the problem is Stephanopoulos said something that was very hard to defend. He used the word rape instead of sexual assault, basically.
Yeah, that was obviously a huge mistake for him, and I believe he apologized after he said it.
I think so. I can't exactly recall, but I think so.
All right, well, I think that's going to do it on this segment. What's behind Trump's Iran strategy? Believe it or not, we have Ambassador John Bolton here to weigh in. Stick around, you don't want to miss it.
Seriously damaged. That's how Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi characterized the state of the Fordo nuclear site after the US strikes. In a sit-down interview with CBS News that aired Tuesday, he said it's unclear exactly what transpired, but Tehran will, quote, make up for lost time if uranium enrichment is renewed.
President Trump has touted the strikes as a success, and while our next guest agrees with the attacks, he recently criticized Trump's Iran strategy, suggesting that the president has personal motivations. Joining us now to elaborate is former U.S. National Security Advisor John Bolton. Mr. Bolton, thank you for joining us. The first question for you is, what do you think Trump has gotten directionally wrong about next steps with the Israel-Iran war after that strike on Fordo and other nuclear facilities?
Well, I don't think there's any doubt that the strike combined with the prior Israeli efforts caused considerable damage, not just to Iran's nuclear program, but to a number of related military capabilities. But one strike is not the end of it. Iran has been pursuing nuclear weapons and ballistic missiles for 30 plus years. The early evidence we can see right after the strike, they're trying to dig out the deeply buried facility at Fordo. They've given every indication there's no change in their strategic objective to get deliverable nuclear weapons. And therefore, I think it's a mistake to say it's over. We've completely and totally obliterated the nuclear program, and therefore it's not a problem anymore. It's a lot more complicated than that. And if you don't keep that future in mind, you're just sowing the seeds for more trouble later.
So what would be the foreign policy solution to get Iran to stop? If this strike isn't it, if diplomacy isn't it, what's the answer?
Well, I think the only long-term answer, not just to the nuclear program, but frankly to peace and security in the Middle East as a whole, is that it's time for the regime of the Ayatollahs to go on the ash heap of history. I think it's very unpopular inside Iran. I think the succession crisis over the Ayatollah Khamenei, when he passes from the scene, which won't be too long from now, he's 86 and not well, could well be the point where the people are able to bring the regime down, where fragmentation could take place among the military leaders, and you could see the thing crumble very quickly. I think that's realistically the only way they give up not only the nuclear program, but Iran's status as the world's biggest supporter of international terrorism.
And how would that be brought about, Ambassador? I mean, are we talking, in your mind, in your ideal scenario, about American military intervention, or are we talking about some other means? You're not just wishing for this to happen. You want some action to expedite it, I assume.
Right. Well, I think we've undertaken action to expedite it. I think Israel has hounded the terrorist proxy groups, Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis. We've seen the Assad regime fall in Syria. We've seen Iran's ballistic missile production capability destroyed, severe damage to the nuclear program. Top generals and other officials, nuclear scientists eliminated. All of this is feeding into the enormous discontent that already exists among the population in Iran. They can say, look at all this, you've squandered untold billions of dollars on the proxies, on the nuclear program, now lies all nearly in ashes. It's not benefited the people of Iran 1 cent. That's the kind of dissatisfaction that can make regime change possible. It's not an issue of boots on the ground. That's the words regime change means you change the regime. There are a lot of different ways to do it.
But to that point, I noticed on your X feed you had tweeted a clip from another interview you had done, and you were making that point that it's not always military boots on the ground, but you went on to say, quote, "I think we can provide support to the opposition and hope that it will be primarily an internal Iranian affair." But my question there is, if we support the opposition, then automatically it ceases to be an internal Iranian affair, does it not? And those opposition groups become discredited as the tools of America.
Well, I think you leave that to the opposition groups. Opposition groups in the Soviet Union during the Cold War welcomed American support. It didn't discredit them. It showed that they really were looking out for the future of the country. So I think we could be guided by what the opposition thinks. There's a huge diaspora of Iranian exiles in Europe and the United States. We have many Iranian American citizens with families inside the country. So I think providing things like communications assistance and frankly, just resources. The opposition inside Iran is nationwide. But it's not organized like a corporate hierarchy. We could help with coordination and a number of things like that would make the opposition more visible in the wider world.
Well, I think the concern would not be that the opposition party wouldn't appreciate American support, but would the rest of the nation respond kindly to, let's say, a CIA-backed coup, effectively? I mean, the U.S. got involved in the Iranian overthrow in 1953, right? That was a CIA-backed coup, and it led to years of discontent and ultimately the rise of this very regime that we're now complaining about. How can we be so sure that whoever replaces the current Ayatollah is going to be more sympathetic to American interests and less likely to support Iranian nuclear capability?
Well, the reinstallation of the Shah of Iran in the 1950s was a great success. He lasted for 25 years. The fact is that opposition is widespread inside Iran. Just to give you a few examples, the economy has been in terrible shape for a number of years. There were riots across the country in 2018, 2019, brutally put down by the regime. But since the economy hasn't improved, economic dissatisfaction across the country remains at very high levels. The young people under 30 or 60% of the Iranian population, they can see they can have a different kind of life. They just look across the Gulf and it's right in front of them. The ethnic groups, which, depending on your estimate, constitute between 40 and 50% of the population, non-Persians, those are Azeris, Kurds, Baluchis, Arabs, very dissatisfied with the Ayatollahs. And ever since the murder 2 years ago of Massie, a young Kurdish woman whom the regime murdered for the crime of not wearing the hijab properly, you saw the demonstrations then, the female part of the population very dissatisfied, really in a challenge that goes directly to the legitimacy of the Ayatollah's claim to speak the word of God that all Iranians have to follow. So you put all that in top of a potential succession crisis. I think the potential for a popular revolution is really very, very large.
Ambassador, we're almost out of time. Now, I would personally take issue with your characterization of the rule of the Shah as a success. I mean, to my mind, the Shah had a repressive regime and an autocratic and corrupt regime that led to support for Ayatollah Khomeini and the Islamic Revolution. But not setting that aside for a second, if there is not this organic opposition that you hope for in Iran that sort of comes to victory peacefully, what do we do? Like, if 1 or 2 or 3 years from now the current regime is still in place, what do we do about that?
Well, we should make the sanctions more effective. They're not being effectively enforced now and haven't been for some time. And I think we have to be continually on watch for the recreation of the nuclear weapons program and take military action where it's appropriate. You know, you have to look at the picture of successful popular uprisings around the world, from Solidarity in Poland against the communists. The population of Iran pre-1979 was sophisticated, educated, and very pro-West. The Shah was a real force against the Soviet Union. And people in Iran remember those days, look back on them fondly. This is not a popular regime. And people who say it's inevitable, it's going to stay in power, really, I think, are very short-sighted.
We've got about 30 seconds left here, Ambassador, and I apologize, it is one that deserves more time, but what do you make of the argument that taking out Saddam Hussein helped to empower Iran to get the regional chops that it has now to pose such a threat to the Middle East and the U.S.?
You know, since the Islamic Revolution in 1979, Iran has been trying to achieve hegemony within the Muslim faith and across the Middle East. The criticism I would make of what we did after overthrowing Saddam was we didn't turn our attention more fully to the threat posed by Iran. If we had been stronger in opposing their nuclear weapons program 20, 25 years ago, we wouldn't have the difficulty we have today. But successive U.S. administrations proved what Winston Churchill once referred to as the confirmed unteachability of mankind, and wouldn't deal with it effectively. That's why we're dealing with it the way we are today.
Ambassador John Bolton, thanks for joining us on Rising.
Thank you.
Next up, Elon Musk and President Trump are each doing their part to escalate their feud. Stay with us. Elon Musk is ratcheting up his feud with President Trump, vowing to support one of the president's arch nemesis, Congressman Thomas Massie.
Musk had posted on X that he would primary any congressman who campaigned on reducing government spending but still voted for Trump's big, beautiful bill. Former Congressman Justin Amash then responded to Musk, writing, "Please support Rep. Thomas Massie. The establishment is working to primary him because he's a genuine fiscal conservative and opposes the big, bloated scam." To which Musk responded, "I will."
President Trump's allies started a super PAC last month called Kentucky MAGA in an effort to oust Massie. The president has recently been torching Massie for opposing the big, beautiful bill, calling the congressman a grandstander and a very bad guy.
Massie and Musk exchanged some kind words on X yesterday. Musk told the congressman he was awesome, to which Massie responded, "You're too kind, but thank you." A large part of my job is to keep governments from screwing things up for the engineers and entrepreneurs who do make this world a better place. I don't think enough people appreciate the contributions you and your teams have made to civilization.
Goodness me. The president addressed his ongoing beef with the tech titan yesterday. Let's take a look at that.
We might have to put Doge on Elon. You know what Doge is? Doge is the monster that might have to go back and eat Elon. Wouldn't that be terrible? He's upset that he's losing his EV mandate, and he's very upset about things, but he could lose a lot more than that. I can tell you right now.
Well, that was really cute with Elon and Thomas Massie sitting in a tree.
Unbelievable stuff. You're awesome. No, you're awesomer. Oh, mad stuff.
The things you've done for civilization.
For civilization, no less. Not merely the United States or the world, but civilization. Look, I guess it's interesting in Massie's case, the threat to primary him for Trump, the threat, or the promise rather, to defend him from Elon Musk. I did look up Massie's campaign spending, and the last 2024, he had a primary that he won easily, and then he had the most tokenistic of opposition in the general election, which meant that he spent a grand total apparently of 1.3 million on his re-election campaign. So a Trump super PAC against him, or Elon Musk's largesse for him, could certainly make it a rather more big spending Kentucky race, I suppose.
Sure, and he's been raising a lot of money organically since Trump has attacked him. The way he described it to me last week was there's been 3 volleys in their sort of feud that's been going on, although he talks about it in a very funny, sort of like nonplussed kind of way. But he said in the first volley he got $300,000+ from donors. The second one, I think he said he got 50, 60,000 in the latest, or 70,000, and in the latest one he's received $130,000. So he's already pulled in more than $500,000 just every time the president attacks him. Sure. And the big challenge in Kentucky is that Kentucky is a state of sort of maverick voters. They are not straight line Republicans.
And Senator Rand Paul as well, right?
Exactly. I mean, they like Thomas Massie's position on ending foreign wars, and frankly, AIPAC has been going after him since 2012. They don't love that the Israel lobby is attacking their home state congressman. And they also are people who have a heavy union presence. The teachers union is one of the largest employers in Kentucky. They are people who, for a long time, were really Dixiecrats before coming over to the Trump camp. So this is a pretty movable and flexible coalition that we're talking about here. The idea that they can just find this like MAGA rah-rah state senator that's going to take out Thomas Massie is, I think, a fundamentally flawed political strategy. And
you think that that is the case even if Trump continues to sort of aim his fire at Massie? I mean, obviously, I take the point that Massie has had a fundraising surge as a consequence of those attacks. But even if Trump continues to place himself very much oppositionally to Massie, your bet would be that those sort of unusual political contours to Kentucky would enable Massie to survive.
I think this is different than a Bob Good situation in Virginia. And I mean, the other problem of this, sort of the elephant in the room, is that Trump will notice if this challenge is not going well, and he won't stick with it. He cares very much about his record when it comes to endorsements. And if the primary comes inching up and Trump's chosen horse is not performing well, he could very well back out of an endorsement and choose to back Thomas Massie again. He's done this before. There was a supposedly MAGA candidate in 2022 that was running against Thomas Massie, and Trump was thinking about endorsing her because she was the, red hat wearing person, and Thomas Massie was kicking her butt. And he called Thomas Massie and said, "Can I endorse you?" Right. And recently in Arizona, Niall, Karen Taylor Robson got the Trump endorsement, but hasn't been performing that well in the Arizona gubernatorial primary. So he, a month later, co-endorsed Andy Biggs.
You just endorsed the other candidate as well. There was the thing in Georgia as well, when he had endorsed, was it Perdue against Brian Kemp? And he didn't exactly abandon, well, I mean, he effectively abandoned him.
Yeah, and he's done it before, and he will again.
2 former presidents are reunited in a rare move to rebuke USAID's closure. More on that after this. Former Presidents Obama and George W. Bush and U2's Bono are saying goodbye to USAID. The unlikely trio teamed up via teleconference Monday to talk to employees on USAID's last day of operations. And the former presidents, in a rare move, rebuked Trump's decision to shutter the agency.
It all comes as Secretary of State Marco Rubio officially announced yesterday that the foreign aid arm has ceased operations. The agency experienced a rapid dismantling since President Trump's return to the White House, and massively in part thanks to the help of DOJ. Rubio writes on X, "The era of government-sanctioned inefficiency is over. From now on, our foreign assistance programs will be accountable to the American taxpayer."
The shuttering of USAID is expected to lead to the deaths of millions around the world, according to a recent Time article. Former US Ambassador to Russia, Michael McFaul, says, quote, "The destruction of USAID will go down in history as one of America's most significant foreign policy mistakes. We have no chance of competing with the Communist Party of China without instruments of influence like USAID. Hope our next president reverses this decision quickly. So you graciously let me rant about the Paramount decision earlier on. I'm sure that this will be the other topic we perhaps disagree fairly vigorously on, but why don't you tell me why you support this or whatever?
Yeah, so I think the most important thing to understand is that this is not a complete shuttering of all of the programs that USAID administers. They've cut about 80% of them, and the remaining 20%, most of which are these direct aid programs that are being cited as potentially leading to loss of life, are being re-administered under the purview of the State Department. The concern was that USAID was operating too independently, was not accountable to the taxpayer, which led to NGOs basically operating as slush funds for members of the administration who were unelected bureaucrats. So they want it directly under the State Department so that Marco Rubio, or whoever the Secretary of State is, has a more direct purview. But I think broadly, a lot of people's concerns about USAID is that the so-called soft power mechanism is not just feeding hungry people in Africa, but also engaging in a lot of quite nefarious and pernicious campaigns to help orchestrate division in other countries. Dropsite News, or excuse me, Grey Zone News did an interesting release on a set of documents about a USAID-backed, effectively, coup in Bangladesh, where USAID and the State Department, by extension, had identified that the Bangladeshi Prime Minister was not friendly to the idea of the U.S. building a military base in Bangladesh. Instead of trying to convince her or offering her something in return, they decided that she needed to be removed. USAID found out that there was an active group of LGBTQ plus activists in Bangladesh who also really liked rap music. So they spent American taxpayer money creating anti-government rap songs targeted towards LGBTQ individuals in Bangladesh for the purpose of overthrowing that regime. I think most sane people would agree that that's not a judicious use of our taxpayer dollars, and also not the best way that we should be conducting foreign policy. And that's not the type of soft power that I want to see America engaging in. So I've already ranted long enough. I have plenty more to say, but I will let you respond.
So you used the word judicious there, and I think that that is important both in terms of spending, but also in terms of cutting. Now, the instance that you cited in Bangladesh is not one that I'm familiar with the specifics of. I take the point that USAID is involved, or has previously been involved, in things that are under the rubric of governance and democracy. And those things can, I think, be useful and can also be shady and can be about political interference. Where I have the problem with the lack of judiciousness in the cutting, though, is, remember, the total USAID budget is about $40 billion. So it's about 1/3 of 1% of the federal budget. And there is plainly money spent there that is being very well spent and is projected not to survive in many of these instances. Now, we cited one of the other examples of the Time report forecasting millions of deaths and all of that. I don't know exactly how that projection was arrived at. But let me just read from the Washington Post this past weekend, who were in Sudan. And they spoke to more than 24 Washington Post interviews with civilians, clinicians, and aid officials in the capital, Khartoum, and surrounding villages. And they found that while the Trump administration's cuts to USAID have been felt across the world, their impact in Sudan was especially deadly. When US-supported soup kitchens were forced to close, babies starved quietly, their mother said, while other siblings died begging for food. Funding stoppages meant that critical medical supplies were never delivered, doctors said. The lack of US-funded disease response teams has made it harder to contain cholera outbreaks, which are already claiming the lives of those weakened by hunger. Even in addition to that, we had the sweeping axing of all the money that was so sudden that actually food aid was trapped at ports and things, rotting there, doing nobody any good, because there was, in my view, far too crude an approach to it.
I agree it could have been executed better, but I also think that there has to be a limiting principle on what exactly around the world the United States is responsible for, and to what extent does USAID handouts actually prevent countries from becoming self-sufficient. One of the things that Marco Rubio cited in his Substack about the ending of the USAID program as we currently conceive of it is that countries that he has been talking to about this don't want constant aid. They want trade relations. They want the ability to export and import goods. They want the ability to have economic development. And he pointed out in response to Michael McFaul's China point, saying we were ceding the ground to China, he points out that after more than $89 billion invested in the Middle East and North Africa, the U.S. still has lower favorability ratings than China in every nation but Morocco. So if this is supposed to be the soft power regime that is increasing the U.S.'s standing around the world, why aren't we seeing results?
I think that's a logical fallacy, but I'm told we're out of time. So we'll return to logical fallacies some other time.
We can always talk about it tomorrow. That's going to do it for us on Rising Live. Look out for more exclusive YouTube content coming your way today. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe to The Hill's YouTube channel so you never miss any content. And for those of you who like to listen while on the go, we are now available anywhere you listen to podcasts.